Today we are going to be spending some time in the kitchen making some Midwest classics, which means frying food. And also I have a few clips from another farm tour that we did here locally. I'm going to show you some things happening around our farm, but first I have just a little rant. Well, maybe not a rant, just a little chat. My sister and I were talking the other day, solving all the world's problems as we do anytime we get to talk on the phone or we get to hang out. And we were looking ahead into our years getting older and into becoming grandmas. And we are both so excited about, not to wish time away. Like, I love the season I'm in of having my own little babies and having them all under my roof. It is so sweet. But I am so excited to, Lord willing, live into old age and get to be a grandmother. I hear all the time from all the grandmas I know that it's like the best of both worlds. You're getting older, so you definitely need a little more rest, and you get that because you don't have little ones underfoot all the time, but you still get to love on your grandbabies. And I just can't wait. And with that conversation that we were having, she and I talked about aging with grace and just accepting that the Lord has created us to, be born as babies and to grow into adults and to age. And then it is a fact of life that, this life will come to an end, and just accepting all of those beautiful seasons of life gracefully. And for women, I think that can be kind of difficult when we are surrounded all the time these days by mirrors and cameras that remind us that we are getting older, that we do have lines and maybe some gray hairs where we didn't have them before. But ladies, I'm here to tell you that is okay. That is how it's supposed to be. That is a beautiful, natural part of growing older. In the Bible, we read about how, gray hair is a blessing and it's a sign of, hopefully, wisdom. Hopefully we're acquiring wisdom as we age. As far as me, when it comes to things like, I'm 36, so I've got some grays. You can see them if you look close. I've got some grays, I've got some wrinkles, and as of right now, I really don't feel any kind of temptation to cover any of that up or to do anything about that. I see my face and my body and my appearance changing, and as of right now, I just feel really okay and at peace with that. It's really not something that I ever have any plan or intention of trying to mask or hide by dyeing my hair or getting any kind of fillers or injections. And honestly, you guys know, part of that is just the crunchy in me. I just don't want chemicals on my head and seeping into my scalp and my brain or being injected into my face. It just kind of scares me. I like to avoid all invasive things when it comes to medical treatment. So especially if it's something cosmetic, then I just really want to avoid all of that. But I'm not, anti-makeup or anti-skincare or anti-doing whatever you can to still look vibrant and youthful. So as I get older, as I age, things that I don't have any intentions of doing right now. I don't have any plans on dyeing my hair. I'm actually really looking forward to myself as a grandma with a long gray braid. I just picture myself that way. So don't have any plans on dyeing my hair to cover up grays. I don't have any plans of getting any kind of procedures like facelift or botox or injections or filler or anything like that. I'm just okay with my natural facial expressions and lines and wrinkles. And I really think that especially as I become a grandma, I don't know, it's just kind of endearing, picturing Granny and her wrinkly smile and everything. That's just how grannies should be. So I'm embracing all of that. No plans on altering any of that, but things that I'm definitely okay with, or even that I plan on doing to age gracefully, definitely staying in good shape, exercising. As we get older, especially into that perimenopause and menopausal season, our estrogen drops, and that can really have a lot of effects on our physical and mental health. But strength training and keeping a good body composition with a healthy amount of muscle can really help with hormonal balance as you make that transition into the next season of life. So I'm totally planning on being a fit grandma and keeping fitness as a part of my lifestyle. Makeup. I like makeup. I like a good natural makeup, and definitely skincare. I can say that skincare is not something I thought about ever as a young person. A lot of you ladies can probably relate. Teens and 20s, I just didn't care. And I didn't have the best complexion. I did have some like acne as a teenager. I just didn't care. But now that I'm getting a little bit older, I'm seeing the effects of aging, because as we get older, specifically into our late 20s and 30s, the natural hyaluronic acid that our skin and joints produce, it starts to decrease. So did you guys know that? Hyaluronic acid is probably something you have in your skincare regimen, but that's something, it's natural. That's something the body produces naturally when we're young, but that production goes down as we get older. So that is one thing that I have been using for quite a while now, and I really like hyaluronic acid for natural moisturizer, because it can hold up to 1,000 times its weight in water. So it's really, really good for deep moisturization. So this is something that I use daily, hyaluronic acid. And actually, I have a really good tip for you guys. If anybody out there is a chapstick addict, because I've been like a chapstick addict my whole life, if you want to break that, first of all, think about your hydration. Are you drinking enough water? Are you hydrated? But also hyaluronic acid, and then apply that to your lips. And then, I know it sounds really weird, but over top of that, lanolin cream. Yes, the lanolin cream you use like when you're breastfeeding. So hyaluronic acid is a regular in my skincare routine, and I really love Dime. It is a natural, gentle brand of skincare products that nourishes your skin without harsh effects. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. You've probably tried skincare products before that like set your skin on fire, and it almost feels counterintuitive, like you're injuring the delicate skin on your face, but that is not the case with Dime. Another thing that I use, and I don't use this every day, I actually just use this a few nights a week, and I gotta be honest with you guys, that's because I don't always remember to wash my face, but it is Dime's TBT cream. So another thing that most ladies know about and have in their routine is retinol. Well, this TBT cream is a much gentler, natural alternative to retinol, because retinol can be very harsh. It's formulated with bakuchiol or bunchyrapum extract and linoleic acid. So those are all like really big words, but those are just natural plant-derived ingredients that give you a retinol-like effect of helping to turn over new cells and give you that like anti-aging, fresh, youthful look without the harshness of retinol. Dime also has some really good eye creams and serums. This Luminosity eye serum is working wonders on my under eye circles. They're so bad. Like, they've been terrible ever since I have had baby number 5. But I'm seeing a huge improvement. So I'm gonna keep using this and just hope that one day he will start sleeping really well. Like, he sleeps, he's a very active sleeper, so I just don't sleep as soundly as I did with all of my other babies. And last but not least on the list of things that I am going to do and not gonna do to age gracefully. Oh, by the way, if you guys want to try Dime, which I highly recommend, they also have really, really great natural perfumes. Then you can use my code HOPEWELL26 for 26% off your first order. I'll put my link and my code in the description below the video, so just tap the more button and check it out. But the last thing on my list before we move on to the next topic of this video, I am not going to be cutting my hair off into short hair as I age. I have no plans to do that, at least. Never say never, right? I plan on keeping my long hair. I know that that is not the thing. That's not what ladies do as they get older. They tend to opt for really short haircuts, and I get that because they're a lot easier to maintain. I guess it's probably a lot easier to wash your hair, maybe as you have, I don't know, maybe just decreased mobility. You know, that's just another reason. That's actually the main reason I'm going to continue being a fit mom and fit grandma and keep working out, is just so that my arms are strong enough and I have enough range of motion to wash my long hair. I'm just kidding. That's not my main motivation. But now that I think about it, maybe that will help me be able to keep my long hair. But I really just always have envisioned I know this is strange, but even as a little girl, I dreamed of being a mother, and then naturally, you know, that turns into being a grandmother one day. I've like pictured my true self as an old lady who is barefoot, just going around with lots of kids and grandkids with a long gray braid. One of the most memorable stories from childhood that my own maternal grandmother would tell me was about her grandmother. So this would have been my great grandmother, who was a full-blooded Cherokee Indian, and she had really thick black hair that was so long it actually would drag the floor when she would let her braids out. And my grandmother has memories of being a little girl and being at her grandmother's house. Her grandmother's name was Catherine Elizabeth. That wasn't her Cherokee name, but that's the name that she wished to go by. So people called her Catherine Elizabeth, but she has memories of being at her house, and she would let down her hair from her braids and it would be hanging over the chair behind her. And her husband, which would have been my grandma's, my great-great-grandpa, my grandma's grandpa, would actually brush, like comb her hair for her. And I don't know why. I just think that is so sweet. And it is like so memorable and magical to think of being a little girl and seeing your grandma's like long flowing hair. So I'm just on a tangent. I'm rambling. So let's move on. Summer is a very busy time for us, especially with all the kids' sports and activities. So, I'm not always great about getting in legit workouts in my gym, but I do walk a lot and I do mobility stuff, even if I can't like find time to just get downstairs and do a legit workout. But things have slowed down now that sports seasons are over and 4-H the fair has passed us. So I am getting back into my workouts. And anytime that I am away from strength training or lifting weights for more than a few weeks, really, I ease back in. I go down on my weight and really ease in just because I want to avoid injury. My goals with strength training, I'm not trying to get jacked or have these like really serious physique goals. I really just want to maintain a healthy body composition and mobility so that I can just be an energized, active, healthy, and fit wife and mother, and someday grandmother. Having a healthy body composition and good muscle tone is going to be the biggest advantage you can have going into perimenopause and menopause. It's going to be the most protective thing when your hormones start to shift and everything starts to slow down and decline. So rather than experiencing that season as like a stormy, very stormy, rocky time in your life, it just doesn't have to be that way. In fact, in many agrarian societies before the advent of massive farm machinery that did all of our farming, planting, harvesting for us, um, actually, postmenopausal women, like women past the childbearing years, did a lot of work out in the fields because they didn't have little children underfoot. And so they did have time to get out and, work outside. And I think that really makes sense because we're meant to be active our whole life as long as we're able to. And during the childbearing season, a lot of that activity is more passive, like with pregnancy and breastfeeding. I mean, you're pouring a lot of your energy into just growing humans. And then when you transition out of that stage, it makes sense that you would use that energy that you're no longer using to breastfeed and be pregnant and be up multiple times a night in other ways that are still, contributing to and growing your family. All right, let's move on to the most recent farm tour that we did. Just by me sharing here on YouTube and sharing with friends that we're making transitions and changes on our farm, that's opened a lot of doors for people that have been so gracious here in our local area to invite us to come see their family farm. So this farm is about an hour from us. It belongs to Mark and Arlene Stewart, who are the in-laws of one of my friends. And Mark and Arlene actually rent their farm out. So the cattle are not theirs, but they have it set up for rotational grazing. So they're still getting the benefits of rotational grazing for their land and building healthy soil. And it was really neat to see because they actually don't live on this family farm. They live about an hour away. So we've been able to see just a variety of ways that people can incorporate regenerative practices like rotational grazing into, onto their farm or their land. It was so hot this day. So I was holding the baby in my lap as we were driving touring the farm. So I didn't get to record as much as I wanted to, but I do have a few little conversations as we were driving through some of the pastures and just talking about the native and warm season grasses.
Handy for us because once in a while our covets or something doesn't work, and then you have to, like, what are you going to do for water? And
right.
You have a hydrant or whatever, Few years. This is our warm season grass right here. This tall stuff.
Yeah.
They were in here a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
So, in the Shreya, we're going to come in and spot treat and try to kill it out. We'll see how that works.
Is that something that sheep would eat?
Sheep, if at the right stage, yes.
So there's a lot of time. It's like an art, I'm guessing, with the timing of that.
Yes.
If you want to.
Yes.
YouTube is great. Really, it has been so valuable to my family in so many ways. I've learned a lot of skills on YouTube, and now we're using YouTube to learn about potential changes we want to make on our farm. But really, there's nothing that replaces getting to, actually walk a farm and see the land and talk to people in person and just chat about their experience and ask questions. And so I'm so grateful that Mark and Arlene gave us that opportunity. How long has it been since you have hauled water across the highway with a water wagon?
Over 20 years.
Over 20 years. Okay. So why are we doing that today then?
We got a pond over there, but the cows are going to the pond. They're hanging around the pond way too much, so all the grass, just say like 800 feet out, all around the pond is down to nothing. Go farther away, and there's grass standing this tall. So what we're going to do is take a couple water tanks up, set them off, all water up there. That way they get away from the pond, get some actually fresh water. It's another good thing, fresh water. And then they'll start grazing around where they haven't been probably in over a month.
Our farm is divided in half by a state highway, and the other half of the farm that we do not live on is raw land. This is it. You're looking at it. So no water, no electricity. Basically my dream. I actually wanted to build up here like an off-grid home. And if John told me tomorrow that we could do that we could move to the other half of the farm in an off-grid home, I would do it in a heartbeat. I would give up my phone, my computer, my YouTube channel, give up all of it. But that's just doesn't look like it's a very promising prospect. So I just get to enjoy the peace and quiet of nature and the pretty views when we come up here to check cows. Okay, so John is going to put one of the water tanks here close to the mineral feeder. That way we know the cows will find it right away, because we know that they're at least coming up here. But the problem is like he said, they're hanging out down by the pond, which is down that hillside, and that's where they're doing all their grazing. So they may come up to get mineral, but what they're not doing is they're not touching any of this pasture up here. They're not grazing up here. So everywhere I'm pointing. So that's why we're spreading their water sources out. You were gone for 3 days this week. Do you care to share where you were?
I was at our county's Soil and Water District class about intensive grazing, rotational grazing, the benefits. That's where I was. It's a 3-day course. I got a certificate when I was done. The reason I attended this program, signed up for it or whatever, is in our. I'm pretty sure this is state, federal, covers everybody, but they do a cost sharing program on whoever does this rotational grazing. And it's basically to improve the soil health. Really helps with your water runoffs, and like I get why they're doing it and everything. But anyway, they do a cost share program, so they help cover the cost of fencing, getting water, where you need it. Obviously, up here where we're at here, I don't know if they pay for a well up here or not. I haven't checked into it yet, but I'm not. Here is just I only got 6 cows on 40 acres. They're just grazing.
Continuous grazing.
I'm just continuous grazing. This would be a very tricky spot just because there's a lot of woods, and it's just, and if you'd only let them get in to graze, pasture area, well then your woods would just grow up in the brush, and the cows help keep that knocked down. That's why I do this up here. But down there on where we got good ground, not trees, but not like big patches of trees.
Our good pasture.
Our good pastures. I'm going to apply that there and
rotational grazing. Yeah.
Rotational grazing, and hopefully see some. I took a soil sample with me the last day of school just so they could test it. I won't know the results for a couple weeks. But.
So yeah, you have to attend one of these grazing schools put on by any county in the state. But it just so happened we found out about this grazing school a couple of days before it started. He made a phone call and he was able to get in. And yeah, once you attend, you get your certificate, then you qualify for this cost sharing, which is pretty significant. 75 to 90% of the cost for your infrastructure, water, fencing, right, John?
Yep.
They will cover. And we've talked to some friends who have participated in this and who implement this on their cattle, and farming operations, and they've really recommended doing it because the savings are substantial, and that really helps with what we're trying to do. Okay, I hear the water wagon. John's dad actually found out about the grazing school. He gets all kinds of farming and ag newspapers and stuff, and he gave it to John. He's like, hey, check into this. Turns out our county's grazing school, like I said, was just a couple of days later, and the cutoff date for the sign up had already passed, but by some miracle he was able to get a hold of them and get in. So I'm so glad we got that done, and we can start getting the supplies we need for the areas that we can start rotational grazing immediately.
You have to open that, otherwise it's like a suction cup.
Gotcha.
It needs vent.
Okay, so there we have it, clean water. Up here on the hillside where we don't have clean running water. So cows are gonna like this.
No, I mean you have shoes on.
Who wants to go with me?
So this is your grandpa's water wagon? Or does this go back to John Henry?
I would say John Henry was alive when they had it. For sure. Yeah.
Do you think he built it?
Well, maybe, no, maybe not. Maybe going back. This is a weld. I don't know.
John Henry is my husband's, would have been his great grandfather, and he is the one who purchased this farm. And so many of the things that we have here are made by him and still have his name on them because he was just an all around pretty talented guy. I think back then a lot of farmers had to be pretty handy with woodworking and welding and building a lot of what they needed. So I always ask, when there's like an old piece of equipment we haven't used in a while, like, did John Henry make that? Anyway, so now we're back in the house, and I was just float testing eggs. Had to throw some bad eggs out. That's always a bummer.
So I'm sure you all know about what flow testing is. It's if you find eggs, a stash of eggs, which this really only happens if you free range your chickens, which we do. So we find stashes all over the farm. Um, and when you don't know how old they are, you just put them in water, and if they float, then they're bad. But sometimes, even if they don't float, they can trick you. So I always, if I'm not sure, I just crack them individually one at a time. And I did find some sneaky bad eggs. So I'm just whipping up some breading and batter for fried pork cutlets. We just had a hog process, so I've got a ton of pork in the freezer. Very exciting because we've been out of pork for a while, like over a month, I think, which is probably the longest time that we have been out of pork since we have been together. These are sourdough breadcrumbs, by the way. So there's no such thing as a ruined sourdough loaf. Maybe it was overproofed or underproofed or whatever and just fell flat. Maybe it was a little bit gummy. That's fine. Just salvage what you can of whatever bread you have, whether it's stale or whatever, as long as it's not moldy. Salvage it and turn it into breadcrumbs. I always have sourdough breadcrumbs on hand, and it's not because I intentionally make them. It's because over the course of a month, can pretty much count on the fact that I'm going to mess up a couple loaves of bread in some way, shape, or form. I actually just uh, burnt an artisan loaf to a crisp, at least on the outside, because I walked outside and forgot about it while it was in the oven. But the inside will be just fine for making breadcrumbs or French toast casserole or something. It's very rare that I would just throw away a whole loaf of bread because it didn't turn out just right. So, for our family of 7, we can go through a whole hog in 4 months. That is the math that we have done. So it would take 3 whole hogs to feed our family for an entire year. And that is still with us eating a lot. Actually, I would say we mostly eat beef. We do eat some chicken, not a lot of chicken because we don't raise our own. And even though I buy chicken from Azure Standard, it's organic, it's pretty good. I just still am not the most confident about anything that we can't raise ourselves, to be totally honest. But, the way things are looking, that's going to be changing. Meat birds are in the plan for, what John has planned as far as running chickens behind the cattle as he rotates them, which is something that I have asked for years. I've asked for us to process our own meat birds, and he always said no. He just didn't want to mess with it. And so before I had this last baby, what I would do is I was just hatching my own chicks, and I would pick a rooster off one at a time and just process one chicken for that particular meal. It's not that hard to do. And I actually did it. I know people say, "Oh, don't do it in your house. It'll stink up your house." I did it in my house. And it was just fine if you're careful with processing and don't cut into anything you shouldn't cut into. I will say that the one thing I did outside was I scalded and plucked outside. I just used a big 5-gallon pot to scald the chicken in or the rooster in. Yeah, and then I would pluck it outside, but then I would bring it in and eviscerate it inside. And it was just fine. And that is how people used to do things, is they would just pick off one chicken here or there. And the nice thing about doing that, especially with roosters, is they are quite large, at least a lot of the heritage breeds that I have. Like the roosters are massive. So, they're it seems like almost twice the size of a, store-bought whole chicken, because it does take 2 of those little 4-pound chickens to feed my family. But when I process my own roosters, then one of them does the trick. Plus, it is just amazing. You get so much more broth from a pastured, truly free range chicken that you raise yourself. Please tell me that we are not the only redneck people who mix mayonnaise and ketchup for anything fried, and we call it fancy sauce. I don't know where this came from. like when we started doing this, but it's a thing. It's fancy sauce. And the mayonnaise at least was homemade. That's my chipotle mayonnaise recipe, which is on my blog, along with my regular mayonnaise recipe. That is one of my, I would say mayonnaise probably is my favorite condiment. It's a tie between mayonnaise, ranch, three-way tie, mayonnaise, ranch, and ketchup. But I actually, a lot of times will make my ranch from my homemade mayonnaise, using that as a base. And you know, I was on a really good kick there for a few years of making all of my ketchup homemade too. But the last couple of years, my tomatoes have just done so poorly. By the way, had to sacrifice that first pork cutlet, accidentally walked away, and burnt it to a crisp. So the dogs got to enjoy that. But, you know, it happens. Anyway, my tomatoes have just not done well the last couple of years. I just haven't had enough tomatoes to make ketchup, but homemade ketchup is delicious. And anytime that you can make condiments homemade, they're of course just going to be so much healthier because I buy healthy stuff as much as possible, even when I do buy processed food. So like the ketchup you see here is from Azure Standard, and there's no corn syrup, nothing crazy, but it's just still not as good as when it's all homemade. Nothing gives me satisfaction quite like, you know, preparing a meal with everything made from scratch and, you know, stuff that we have grown or raised. But like I said, since I've had that fifth baby, that just has not happened like it used to. So maybe I'll get back there someday. I think I'll get back there someday. But for now, you know, I'm just happy doing what I can from scratch and growing the little bit I can grow in my garden and actually keep up with, which this summer I have actually done a lot of pickle making, a lot of pickle fermenting, so I am happy about that fact because I love pickles. All right, well that wraps it up for this week. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next week.